Hello, everybody. This is the third part of Schlock and Not Much Awe. And I have filmed this video in three parts. And I can tell you, and I've been recording it over the last couple of days. And just in the last couple of days, it does feel the Russia-Ukraine storyline, that momentum has petered out a little bit here. And it is St. Patrick's Day today. So happy St. Patrick's Day, first and foremost. And hope you're having a great day and eating some corned beef and cabbage. And yeah, we're celebrating here, I can tell you that much. And saying a little extra prayers to St. Patrick to certainly stamp out the snakes. If they're not real, certainly metaphorical in this world we're living in. And we left off the last video with, a look at the money system and how the gold standard gave way to petrodollars and globalization, and now giving way to, or looks like, the digital dollar, which is what all these news stories are about, and the sandwich times we're living in, the fogginess of war. And if we look at the transit field, you can see Uranus is in Taurus. So Taurus is the bull, and it does represent capital. It's about as fixed an earth sign as you can get, Taurus. And in this is Uranus, which is now in gate 24, the gate of rationalizing. And Uranus is revolutionary, it is different, it is something new. So to have a planet like this in the capital, in a sign that represents capital or money or materialism, you can see how it sort of fits here with that theme. And that, it is a transformation or something new with money. And I mean, certainly looking at this gate 24 as I'm saying this, so not only is Uranus about the revolutionary aspect of things and the transformative process that goes into new inventions and so forth, but it's in this very gate, the gate of rationalizing, returning, the natural and spontaneous process of transformation and renewal. And there it sits, and I believe there's going to be certain aspects to it. I'm not an astrologer, I don't want to get into it, but it's not so hard to believe or to expect that our material resources, money, is going to be changing in this next few years. And again, it's getting drowned out by the schlock and not much awe. They're trying to create a lot of shocking news stories on the telly, and it's working to some degree. It is definitely fooling people and whipping up a lot of anti-Russian momentum and pro-Ukraine support. I just received this, and again, I'm taking everything I see with a grain of salt, but I did receive this, and no matter what way you look at it, and I don't have the video here, but these are live. Certainly on the top, these are live people. One is smoking here, being wrapped up to made look like they're dead civilians. And it's easy to do these things, and it's easy for the military to take photos of these things and then pass them along to a news organization or a journalist. So the journalist in good faith will get this video coming from what, is a military source. It's maybe someone they've talked to for, 10, 20 years, handing them this. They're going to take it on the face that there's truth to it. And in war, as Orwell said many times, the first thing to go is truth. So I thought this was interesting again. And this is to create the schlock, so then our authorities can turn back and, it's the feedback loop of, well, look, it was on telly. And we had Kamala Harris saying something like that similar. They're not looking at their own, intelligence or data, but pointing to the telly as confirmation of why they need to do what they're doing or why they need to support who they're supporting. When really, again, we are in this fog of war. There's a lot of deception, and the transit field in Pisces with Neptune, which is all about the visual medium and photography and video and filmmaking. It's in Pisces. It's, dreaminess on top of dreaminess, the illusions on top of the illusions. And it's naive to think that it's not being used for many different agendas. I mean, it's not so simple that everybody in the world is working for the same purpose or for the same cause, if you like. So when Joe Biden gave his inaugural address a little bit more than a year ago, his big word was unify, unity. I think that was it, unity. And a lot of people were scratching their heads saying, well, what does he mean by this? Because we've never been more disunified. There's such a split in the populace. And I believe what he was saying and what he was referencing was unity, not necessarily to the masses, not necessarily to the people, but he's trying to signal that to the various players in the establishment, meaning we all have to have unity here. So, for instance, big pharma is going to want to keep pushing the vaccines, when indeed there comes a point where the Democrats, who are now in power, and a lot of Democrats in these big cities are going to want to call a lid on COVID and make it go away. And that's just one example, but there's many cross purposes here. You have the military industrial complex angling for things. And I believe he was speaking to the powers that be, to these different vested interests that now under his watch, if things had to change and shift, he needed all of their support. So I think that's what he was talking about in for that. So, but you're not seeing that. You're still seeing people coming out and going with their different agendas here. And you can see this with Ukraine, where there's a lot of people in both sides of the parties here in the US who are calling for World War III. And the military industrial machine certainly wants to keep, selling goods there and weapons. And Congress has just, announced billions of dollars of more quote unquote aid to the Ukraine people, which, again, as I said yesterday, it's not going to go to them. It's going to go to the banking system, the financial system, to prop up the government. Okay, so you need money to help support the leaders. So again, there's a lot of different agendas at play here. And one agenda, too, for propping up this war has to do with the fact of, making COVID go away. And, the woohoo, yoo-hoo sandwich. And making it go away in a sea of concern and fears. And we've got a new thing to worry about. We have Ukraine, Russia, we have a possible World War III. We have the possibility of a nuclear war. These are new worries now to replace COVID, and a lot gets blurred in this breaking news woohoo yoo-hoo sandwich. And so this segment, this is the final segment of this whole video, is this, sudden death segment. So the sudden deaths. So I talked about Shane Warne, and I have more on him before I conclude. But last week, Labour Senator, and this is in Australia, one of the Labour senators, Kimberly Kitching, dies suddenly in Melbourne. And again, aged 52. So we had a cluster of 52-year-olds last week that I just happened to coincidentally just mentioned. There were more, but these 52-year-olds. The Labour Senator Kimberly Kitching has died suddenly of a suspected heart attack. Now, nowhere in this story, and it's a Guardian story, but if I pulled any story, none of them mentioned COVID, and none of them mentioned the vaccine, and none of them even mentioned COVID. And again, when you're reading through some of this stuff, this story or any others, it's interesting what is included and what is not included. What is not included. And they do not include COVID. And again, this was a shock. There's no indication she was sick. The Labour family here, this is from Anthony Albanese. The Labour family is in shock tonight at the tragic news that our friend and colleague, Senator Kimberly Kitching, has died suddenly. So confirming this sense of shock, this wasn't expected. And again, you would think, 3 years on with COVID and cases are rising, certainly in China, that there would be some kind of mention of it. Nothing. And then we had Hailey Bieber, the 24-year-old wife of Justin Bieber, developing a mini stroke last week. And how many 24-year-olds do you know having strokes? I don't know many. This is an old person disease. This is an old person condition. And she wrote, on Thursday morning, I was sitting at breakfast with my husband when I started having stroke-like symptoms and was taken to the hospital. So these are mini strokes. These are TIAs, it sounds like. They found I had suffered a very small blood clot to my brain, which caused a small lack of oxygen, but my body had passed it on its own, and I recovered completely within a few hours. She was hospitalized. So she was in the hospital, and Justin Bieber, mentioned through different tweets or on Instagram, I can't remember where, that he was, very worried about her, and he should be. So she is home now and doing well. But having gone through a TIA, and I know people who have, I've got family who've gone through that. So I have some experience with this. When you go through a TIA, the chances of you having a full-blown major stroke go up dramatically within a year or so. So now this young girl, who was in peak health beforehand, her chances of developing a stroke have gone up. TMZ said, we're told it affected the way she moved. The symptoms are typical for much older people. Yes, Hailey's, okay, she's 25. The report I saw here, and I think this is from TMZ, our sources, they do mention COVID. Okay, so they do say, at least acknowledge it and say, they're looking to see if the symptoms involve COVID. As we reported, Justin came down with COVID and has since recovered, but I don't recall, even at the peak of problems 2 years ago, that people were getting strokes from this. People were having a hard time breathing. There were pneumonia-like symptoms in which people were put on ventilators. I don't remember strokes being an issue. And with, presumably if she was vaccinated, okay, it does get to the point too, if she was vaccinated, this should have protected her from getting COVID. But again, we're so, the lies on top of lies, we're so far removed from even questioning that. We just have bought into to the talking point of, it's much better you got the vaccine because the symptoms would have been a lot more mild. Well, that certainly doesn't point to that in Hailey Bieber's case. I hope to take a little bit more of a look at her and her chart. I have not had time to do that, but I'm hoping that I do that. But hey, you know what? Oh, well, make sure you get your booster. So Pfizer CEO around the same time frame says, or shortly thereafter, the Hailey Bieber story and Shane and all these other sudden deaths, he says a fourth dose of COVID vaccine is necessary and submits data to FDA. So you can really see, again, this agenda at play. Pushing the billion-dollar gravy train that is the COVID vaccine. They do not want to let it go. These pharma companies absolutely want to milk this. They really want the gravy train to go as far as it possibly can go, even though a lot of the Democrats now want to end COVID. Again, there's a lot of effort in making this whole story kind of sort of go away. And I contend that I think we're looking at a double-decker COVID woohoo, sandwich here. I get the feeling this is going to flare up somehow, this story. I don't know, though. It's really hard to get a beat on this. Again, there's a lot of competing agendas and a lot of competing interests at the top now, fighting for that 1% crumb or fighting to get the most they can before the system totally implodes. Shane Warne, I found out from High Vibe Television, a journalist on there, did confirm, and she knows Shane, and she was friends with him, and she's Australian herself, and she confirmed last week that Shane Warne was indeed vaxxed. He had the 2 vaxes and was boosted. So she did confirm that, because we didn't know that in the first video, if that had anything to do with that. And she also said he was in a real workout mode. And that has come out. It wasn't just this 14-day liquid diet, but he was really working out. He wanted to get buff. And, he has this Open G Center. He had an Open G Center. So looking for direction in, this middle-aged part of his life, after the glory years of his, cricketing days. And you did get the sense he was looking for direction. And a lot of these Open Gs do so by going on diets and fasts. It's not just a physical thing for them, but through fasting, through they're through depriving themselves of certain foods and stuff, they're looking for a direction. That's a way for the open G to get that. And I know that I'm an open G, and it's not just a health thing for me at all. I feel like I need to get on track and have things open up for me. And at least for me anyway, there does seem to be this little link between, and this happened recently. I gave up chocolate for about 2 months. After Christmas, I said, that's it. I'm done with chocolate. I'm going to really give it up now for 6 to 8 weeks. And I'll tell you, at the end of 6 or 8 weeks, I had new invitations coming up for different things. And so it's a mechanism that works for me that I've noticed. And I've noticed it works for other open Gs, or they seem more open to it. So I share that, if you do have an open G, or if you're dealing with open Gs, this is a nice way to get them on direction or on track, or get the invitations coming. But anyway, it was confirmed he was in this workout mode, vaxxed and boosted. And this is from Dr. Peter McCullough on why athletes are collapsing. And we've seen about 300 athletes the world over collapsing. Some are dying. And he says, when you have a surge of an adrenaline and you have vaccine-induced myocarditis, that's what triggers the sudden death. And again, we don't know what happened with Shane Warne. I mean, this is pure speculation on my part, because I am suspicious on his sudden death. I'm suspicious of all these sudden deaths. And Edward Dowd, who is a financial analyst, he used to be at BlackRock. He was a portfolio analyst, so he's amazing at crunching the numbers. He's using his talents and skills to crunch the COVID death numbers. And he said after crunching the numbers that the excess death rates in Americans between the ages of 25 and 44 rose 84% in the autumn of 2021 to 61,000. And there's a little typo here with 2. 61,000 excess deaths. So, every year, you have so many people dying in so many different age brackets. This is the excess deaths on top of that. And he reckons it was 61,000 that happened after the mandates came in force with different cities and governments and municipalities and companies saying you have to get this vaccine. And he noticed that. And he calls it the Millennials Vietnam War. That in the same age bracket, 58,000 American men, mostly men, were killed during the Vietnam War. And you have 61,000. And it dipped back down here, but he reckons it's going to go back up. He said there's a bit of a lag in the data as well, because a lot of these millennials, they don't die in hospitals. Again, it is a sudden death. They're not at a hospital. Like Shane Warne, he was in Thailand at a resort when this happened. He wasn't, yes, he complained of chest pains ahead of time. Yes, he had asthma, but nothing was serious enough for him to go to the emergency room or, be at the hospital getting treated for something else when this happened. So we have to be aware of the sudden deaths. We have to still have the woohoo shot clots in the back of our head as well, and not let the yellow journalism of the day make us forget. And that's what yellow journalism does. It makes us forget. I mean, just keep aside whether you're pro or anti-Russia or pro or anti-Ukraine or whatever party you like or leaders you like. The real nub of the problem with yellow journalism is that it makes you forget. It makes you forget. And we have had a minor collective scrubbing of our memory when COVID hit and we were forced to be in our homes and we were forced to not see people. You forget to talk to people. You forget what's going on in their life. You forget things you have in common. And it's being recreated when you have yellow journalism, as we're seeing with the Yoo-hoo sandwich here. They want to make us forget. And I also contend too, turning this harsh, glaring yellow, kind of, some tones can be a little nauseating or jaundiced looking, and instead shifting it to a gold, to a soft gold, to the softness of a gold, the warmth of gold. You are the gold. You don't have to be depending on the media or the outside world for direction or information. And, if you start feeling fearful, sick, too much, you are the gold. And that's, it's being forgotten with all this too. That's what the yellow journalism is also forgetting. It makes you forget you're the gold. The heart is the intersection of above and below, right and left, and up and down. And to reclaim your gold, to reclaim your worth, to reclaim your value, to know your value. So I just want to leave on that thought and that image. It's a painting by Aniel. She's a Bulgarian artist, and I just want to leave you with that. And see all these little light beings around this picture. You have light beings around you too, and they need you to go within, and they need you to tap into that heart center space for them to do more work on you, which in turn will do more work on the world. So it really is one person at a time. That's how you affect the environment. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much. If you did listen to all this, thank you very much. I'm hoping to keep these videos even shorter than they are. And but thank you very much. And thank you for your feedback. So I've had a couple people reaching out to me. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate it. Take care, everybody. Have a great St. Patrick's Day. Everyone's Irish today. Don't forget, everyone's Irish. Take care. Bye-bye.